Greetings, shippers. Welcome back, and it's time for yet another Fanversations. This time, we're joined by Sarah, patron, fanfiction writer, and literary student. We're going to talk about tons of things: fanfiction, writing tropes, and the relationship between fanfic writing and contemporary writing. It's going to be a very interesting time, so I hope you're ready. And if you're interested in checking out any of her stuff, all of her links will be down below. Speaking of, if you're interested in getting involved in these Fanversations, then please reach out to me, be it on Instagram, Twitter, email, and please do remember that patrons do get first dibs, so if you're really interested in getting out there right away, then please consider supporting in that way. If not, it's absolutely fine. I do my best to get back to everybody. But for those who have emailed me, you must know I'm a reply turtle. I am slow. Also, please feel free to follow me on Twitter and Instagram just in general if you're curious about what's coming up next, because I tend to talk about what I'm doing and what I'm working on there a lot more than I do in the community section here. But I do also talk about it in the community section, which I'm so glad is a tool that they've returned to, because it's very vintage YouTube and I like that. So without further ado, let's start this Fanversation. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. I just had a really good crepe, so
That's really good.
I'm happy. Yeah. Yeah. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's really gloomy here today, but it's been a good day so far.
It's actually like where I live, it's really not that cold, and it makes me sad.
Oh.
But it's the weather's been nice, so that's good, I guess. But I wish it was colder.
Up here, we're not living up to our Canadian stereotype at all. Everybody keeps asking me, they're like, well, so are you covered in snow and just up to your door? It's no, not even close.
It's usually like at least snowed once in New Mexico by now, but it's just like, nope, global warming is a thing. So, but.
So how I normally do these is I just start off with like a brief introduction, and do you have any social media or anything that you want to plug or like anything like that?
Yeah, sure. I'm on Tumblr at Starks and Skywalkers, and I post a lot on there. But I'm Sarah. I am a avid fan fiction writer and reader, and just overall fandom human. So, yeah.
No, I was really excited when you reached out and said you wanted to talk about tropes, because tropes are so fascinating. There's some that overlap with mainstream media, but then there are some that are just completely unique to the fan sphere that are so fascinating.
I think that fan fiction is so interesting. Like I'm like a literature major, so I like study a lot about, like mainstream media, but something that I find really, really interesting about fan fiction is that it's like it's its own like subgenre. Like there's certain things that in fan fiction that you do that like distinguishes you as a fan fiction writer, not just like the kinds of things you write about, but also like the style that you write in. And like I find that like super, super interesting.
Yeah, because there are things that will happen in a fan fiction story that are completely acceptable or can even be done very well, but when they happen in a mainstream story, all of a sudden it's, oh, that's fan fiction-y, or that's not very good, or why is that happening?
Yeah, it's like when The Cursed Child came out, everyone was like, oh my gosh, it's so fan fiction-y. It's like, that's amazing, like that's great. I don't know why all of you were so mad about it, but yeah, so stuff like that. I've never seen the amount of like crazy stuff that happens in fan fiction happen in anything else, and I just think that's fantastic. Like you can do whatever you want, which is like amazing, and anyone can write it and anyone can post it, which is like really, really amazing. So yeah.
I think the closest I've ever seen a show come to that is probably Once Upon a Time, with all of the nonsensical like family relationship reveals. He's his father, he's his brother.
God, yeah. Yeah, oh my god. I remember like when I got like super frustrated with Once Upon a Time was like during like the Peter Pan season.
Oh my gosh.
It was Rumpelstiltskin's father, and I was like, I'm done. I am done with this. This makes no sense. Like
they tried to make it so dramatic, and I couldn't stop laughing with like, it's what you say, Papa. Like, no,
like, you're like this 14-year-old kid. Like this does not work. This is not okay. But yeah. But that's like something like totally normal that would like happen in a fan fiction, I feel like, or like everyone dies. Like, why does this character like always get killed off in fan fiction? Like stuff like that.
So what kind of fan fiction do you write?
I write a lot of, I feel like I write I mean, a lot of like ship fan fiction, a lot of like multi-chaptered stuff. My first fan fiction that I ever wrote was Jack Frost and Elsa. And
Yes.
like, I don't like to talk about
Oh.
it. It's just, like, yeah. But that was like my first like thing that ever got like kind of popular. And I like playing with like things, I don't know, like weird relationships or like I don't know. I usually write multi-chaptered stuff though, and then I like for like I've only like finished some of them, and then like for the other ones, everyone's like, "I hate you." And like,
Work in progress forever.
College is just hard. It takes up all my time. I've been writing it for a while. I've been reading it for even longer. I think like my first fan fiction was like Robin and Raven from Teen Titans. I was like, this is great. And then I was like, oh, I'm gonna start writing it. I just love ships so much.
So how did you start discovering tropes? Because I remember when I first started reading fan fiction, at first it started off pretty tame, and then just as the more and more I read, I just fell further and further down the rabbit holes until before you know it, you're at Alpha, Beta, Omega. And how did you get there?
Yeah. I feel like the more you like, I feel like if you're really into a certain ship, you start reading a ton in that ship, and then you see things that like pop up more and more. Like I remember one of the things that I first remember, one of the tropes that I first remember was like the punk nerd AU that was happening in like Rise of the Brave Tangled Dragons fandom. And I was like, what is this? And so I like did all this research, and I was like, oh, that's what that is. So I feel like there's certain tropes that apply to all fan fiction, but there are some that like just apply to certain like shows or certain ships that are really, really interesting. I didn't even know about Alpha, Beta, Omega until you made a video about it, and I was like, this is like a whole thing that I did not know about. I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like there's just so many. Sex pollen is a big one in Star Wars, and I'm just like, what is this?
I don't blame them, because there was that one episode that is essentially a sex pollen episode in the original series where he gets sprayed with the pollen. All of a sudden he feels love and all these other emotions.
Was that the beginning of it? Was that the beginning of that trope, or was it?
I need to look into it, because I feel like that might have been its genesis, like an actual canonical genesis, because like I love looking into the origins. When I discovered the origin of the coffee house AU, I was so thrilled because it started in Stargate Atlantis, of all places.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah, coffee shop AUs and, like, high school AUs. Like, some people hate them, but I freaking love them. Especially if it's, like, written in character. You're like, oh, my God, they would totally do that. Like, this person would totally be in this clique. And it's just, like, it's great because they're usually not as, like, harrowing as some other fan fictions, and you can just be like, oh, this is nice, but also like fun exploration of characters.
How far into the AU of tropes can you go? Because sometimes I find that things just get a little too AU, but like how AU can you go?
I feel like I used to be way more into AU. I have a friend that like all they write is AU, and I like that, but I feel like I like AU more when it's like some version of canon. If it's like a sci-fi thing that's like a high school AU, I'm like, I wrote a fan fiction recently that's like in Stranger Things. Like Mike, I don't know if you've seen Stranger Things, but like, okay, so like Mike and like Will, their roles get swapped in the first season. So stuff like that I really, really like, but not as much like the crazy AUs anymore. Because it's just like, I don't know how I feel about this, because I feel like a lot of times they have the tendency to get really out of character, which that always like throws me off in the story.
Yeah, when people get too OC, because then it doesn't feel like you're reading about the original character. It's kind of like you were reading an original piece, which is fine, but if you went into it expecting to read about those characters, then they can kind of throw you off. But
yeah, like there's nothing wrong with writing your own stuff. Like I write my own stuff, but if you're like going there for fan fiction and it's like kind of fan fiction, kind of not, you're just like, I don't like this. And then you just like stop halfway through.
So since you've been writing your own stuff too, how has fan fiction writing affected your own writing?
I'm in like kind of advanced level creative writing class right now, And I had like two instances that were really weird with this. So like the first story that I wrote, my professor like gave me back the copy of it, and he was like, "This is too, like, you wrapped it up too well. Like, this is too sweet." And I was like, "Oh God, this is because I write fanfiction, and I just want everyone to be happy." And like that's not how like normal like contemporary like literature stuff like usually is. And then there was this other girl that was in my class who wrote this like science fiction piece, and we weren't supposed to write a science fiction piece, and I could tell that she was a fan fiction writer. Like, just the style and the things that she did within the story, I was like, this person writes fan fiction and they don't know how to separate the two, which is like, it's fine, but that was just, it was really interesting to see that and to like notice there's ways that fan fiction writers style their stories that are way different than like not normal authors, but like mainstream
authors.
Yeah.
What would some of those differences be? Like, what would you note, do you think?
Some of like the character descriptions, I feel like in fan fiction, there's this thing that I've noticed where they instead of saying he said or she said, they're like the raven-haired boy said and stuff like that. And some of the like reveals of things seem like very like overly dramatic, which is fine. And also with like multi-chapter stuff especially, things feel very, very episodic, because I feel like fan fiction writing is like a new genesis of this kind of like when Charles Dickens was first writing, he would like publish it chapter by chapter.
Yes.
And I feel like obviously fan fiction, you publish, either you write the whole thing and then you like put it out, or it's like a one shot. But usually if people are writing multi-chaptered stuff, they just write it chapter by chapter. And that like the story that I read in class, that seemed like that was what it was. It was like just an episode in this larger story. It's really interesting that it's become this kind of new like serialized like thing.
Yeah, because that completely alters how you write, because as you're writing, you can get feedback in a much different way than you would if you're sending it off to, say, an editor for that kind of review. You're getting constant feedback by multiple individuals, and it might actually impact how you take the story, where you take it, and just having it's a very different audience.
It really is.
Online.
And I wrote a fan fiction last year that got like a lot of attention, and there were a lot of people like commenting on it with like their own theories about what was going to happen. And I was like, I hadn't even thought of that. That's like really good. And I didn't like take any of what they said. Like, I didn't like copy anyone's like in my thing, but I was just like, this is so interesting. Like, I wonder if this happened in like normal, not normal literature, but like contemporary literature, if that would like have an impact on how it's written, because you do get a lot more like audience feedback and people talking about your stuff that you can like see right on the story as it's being written. So that's really cool. I found that really awesome.
Do you find that there's kind of a bit of a hierarchy that's starting to be established, a bit of a like, this is better than this, and we need to... I feel sometimes that separation is there because they want to kind of imply that the one is better and takes more skill than the other.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that. In fan fiction more lately, there's been this kind of like if you don't write to a certain quality, your stuff is not going to get read, which I understand. Like, higher quality stuff is like more enjoyable to read, or like maybe easier to read, but also like for like people that are like first getting into writing and like fan fiction writing, and if this is their first like introduction, I feel like the higher up people who have written like for longer and like are like at the top of that hierarchy, like sometimes tear other people down a little bit, which is, I mean, it doesn't happen a lot, but I've seen it happen. I feel like fandom is generally pretty nice about it, but I also feel like people get really like discouraged about like not being as good as certain fan fiction writers that have been doing it for longer, or things like that.
I feel like that's almost a symptom of there being so much of it now.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, definitely. I think that like when I was first getting into it, I would like write on fanfiction.net and it was like whatever, like everyone like wrote terribly and had horrible grammar and it like wasn't even a thing. But now if I like have one typo, someone will be like, "Oh my gosh, you need a beta reader." And I'm like,
Yeah.
I have one, I promise. I'm like, don't bully me. I feel like it's a lot different than it used to be. Like it was more like just a giant community where everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, that's really cool. Like you're writing about this. It doesn't really matter like if your grammar sucks." But now it's like, get a beta reader or you're gonna be dead.
I do have to say that I do like that there is the acknowledgement now, though, that fan fiction can be really good quality. Because people like to use fanficky as an insult, but I don't feel that that's accurate because so much fan fiction is really, really good.
Yeah, like I was reading this one fan fiction like a couple months ago, and it was better than some of the like published stuff that I was reading. I was like, holy crap, this person's prose is like fantastic. And it was like 100,000 word story. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I feel like that stuff is like more readily available now, which is really, really cool. I feel like it's really like not taken seriously by a lot of people, but I feel like I kind of feel like it should be. I don't know. Because there are a lot of writers that are like not as great, but there are some authors that are like amazing, and I think that their stuff should be recognized as like maybe not like actual stuff, because they're obviously it's different than like writing an actual like an original story, because you're not coming up with like the world and everything. But in terms of like writing style, I think that people should be like not I don't think it should be as taboo as it is right now. I think that's kind of like harmful to people, but
yeah, I don't think it should be taboo. I feel like it can't be fully acknowledged because there's all the nebulous legalities of acknowledging it would get very complex. But I do think it can be acknowledged that you can write well, and that writing fan fiction isn't stifling to one's own creativity, which is an argument that I've heard put forth.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So in my hometown, there was this like kind of small science fiction convention. Since it was really small, I got to like meet a lot of the authors, and someone had a question about like fan fiction. And one of the science fiction authors was like, "I think that fan fiction is horrible and that these people need to like stop writing it and write their own stuff because it's like killing young writers." I'm like, that doesn't even make sense to me, because I feel like I wouldn't be as good of a writer if I hadn't have started writing fan fiction, because it's just so hard to get into the industry. For one, it's not hard to get your fan fiction out there and have like thousands of people read it. Like that's a really like easy way to start getting feedback on your work, even if it's not your own original stuff. I just think it's really harmful to tell people that like fan fiction isn't a
valid outlet.
Yeah, a valid outlet. But I've also had some people that are like super supportive of it. Like my mom, whenever I was in high school, I would tell my mom that I was like writing fan fiction, and she would like tell her friends, and I was like, "Mom, don't tell your friends that I'm writing fan fiction. Like that's not okay. Like that's not good." And they were like, "Oh, that's so cool." And I'm like,
my parents were really supportive back in the day too. It was really cute. I used to make fan videos, and every time they would gather around, they were like, "Hey, she made another one. Gather around. Let's all sit and watch it." They made me burn them all into a disc, and sometimes they would sit and watch them. It was really cute, though. I appreciate it.
Oh my god, that's great. Yeah, I remember one time we were at like a church gathering thing. And my mom had these friends that used to work in the movie industry, and I had like written a Super 8 fan fiction. Do you remember that movie Super 8?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. I was like, I was so into but I had written this fan fiction, and I had told my mom about it, and she was like telling these people about it, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing! You should send it to us." And I was like, "You don't." So like, no, I'm not going to do that.
I think it can be a really valid writing tool, because there's something to be said about learning to write in another voice. I think that while it could be possible that could harm you from developing your own, but it could also help you make your own more distinct, because identifying what is and isn't your voice, or also it depends what type of writing you want to do too. There are tons of people who, like TV writers or stuff, who constantly write in others' voices or have to make their voices match other writers. So that can also be a skill in itself.
That's definitely true. Yeah, and I think fan fiction writing almost like it helps you, like identify certain people's voices. I was having a conversation with an English professor or something, and he was like, there's pretty much no original writing style now. It's just like an amalgamation of writing styles that you like and creating a different combination to like make something that feels new. And I feel like fan fiction writing is like a really good way to like kind of develop your own style, because if you're writing from like multiple different fandoms, there are different things that you're going to do, and then you can like combine them to kind of make your own, which is really cool. And I feel like that's not something that you can really do in any other kind of writing.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of specific to fan fiction, which is, I mean, I guess writing in the style of the certain fandom that you're in is like another trope.
It is, because people definitely try and match it. It's more than just I'm trying to tell a story. It's I'm trying to tell a story that's genuine to the world and these characters' voices that I love.
Even within a fandom, like different ships have their own writing style because the characters are different. So I really have gotten into like the Stranger Things and It fandom recently, and a lot of the people in that fandom are a lot younger, so the style is like so much different than other fandoms. It's not like necessarily worse or better, but it's just really different, and I think that is like really, really interesting, because it's like a very concrete like example of that, the different kinds of writing. And maybe it has to do with who is in a certain fandom also.
How do you feel about how smutty a lot of fan fiction is?
I think that it's fine. There's definitely a specific, like, the audience for that is like slightly different than like normal fan fiction, but I think it's fine. Like, there's smutty like romance novels that women or men or whoever wants to read them would like read in the bathtub. It's like the same thing, but it's just with characters that you already know and are like putting them in these situations, which I think is fine. I think it's a little problematic when doing it for like underage characters,
especially if they're not aged up. That can get very uncomfortable. Like, because lots of times I get requests for tons of different ships, and I don't mind talking about any of them, but one of the ones I get a lot is Pinecest, which is the Pines twins from Gravity Falls. And the thing is, and like, they're so young. I couldn't even show pictures of that. That's just, I can't.
And it's like, one, it's incest, and two, it's underage. It's like underage incest is like the worst thing I can even like fathom. Not that people that write that are like disgusting or anything. Like, do what you want, but also like, I don't know. It's difficult. It's complex, especially because fandom, there are so many young people in it. And while I don't think that means that you have to like, cover their eyes, avert the children and all of that stuff, I do think one needs to be aware potentially of what fandom you're in, how young the people are. If you're putting stuff out there, making sure that it's properly tagged. And if you're on the other side of it and you have kids who are getting into it, just being aware of what is potentially out there so that you can talk to them about it. Because I definitely read all kinds of stuff when I was coming up in the fan fiction world. I think it's better and worse now than when I was first getting into fan fiction, because on Archive of Our Own they have that like disclaimer before like rated M and rated E stuff, which I think is good, but I also think that it's more frequent. Like, the amount of smut is greater than it used to be. I mean, there's just like more fan fiction than there used to be, so that means like by like extension that there's more like smut. So I mean I feel like it's better tagged and better like
better organized, definitely.
But
it's also simultaneously easier to find at the exact same time.
So I mean, if a kid wants to read that, like, you were warned.
You were warned, and I feel that people do self-police more than people expect them to. Even kids. I remember being younger, and I know I'm not every kid, but I remember looking at some stuff and being like, well, that's too high rating, no thank you. Not right now. And I think more people do that than people realize, or they start reading something and realize it's not for them, and they just close it and they don't just stay. Like, it's not Clockwork Orange where someone's holding their eyes open. They have to skim through all of it.
Like, people are people have their own free will, so it's like it's not. I think you don't have to like control everything that someone is doing, but I do think that the precautions are there, and I think that yeah, like there's self-policing and stuff, and I think that's good.
No, I can see why people do say it, but I do also feel that sometimes, especially in fandoms, people react very quickly on the discourse side of things. I've seen that a lot with a lot of not younger as an age, but just younger, newer emerging fandoms. There's a lot of concern around the politics of shipping and why people ship, and a lot of, I feel, over identification, or people placing an over amount of identification on the people who do ship, like, oh, you ship this, so you must think that. And I don't think that that is accurate at all. I encountered a lot in Voltron, which I'm still I'm still all up in the Voltron fandom.
Not to like cause any controversy, like please don't hate me. I'm not like gonna comment on like what I ship in the Voltron fandom, but I just think that like that fandom in particular has become like so toxic. Like I can't even I can't even like touch it anymore because it just keeps getting worse. And I think the whole underage argument,
controversy,
it's not even like one of the worst like age gaps in a fandom that I've seen, or that I've I've potentially shipped. Like I don't understand why it's so like people get so worked up about it. It just I just don't understand it.
I think it's a symptom of the ship war itself, because I do feel that it is a very large way that people seek to justify the dominant ship by making the other ship appear morally reprehensible. It's not just that we ship this other ship, it's that our ship is actually like morally better than your ship.
And I think that that's like ridiculous, and I think that that's something that started to happen more recently, like people needing justification for their ships, like like why? It's a fictional ship. Like neither of them are probably gonna like nothing is probably gonna be canon anyway. Like it doesn't like I haven't been a part of like a real ship war or anything, because like I just don't. That just seems kind of crazy to me. But I know that I like encountered a couple years ago, like people that shipped Raylo were getting like so much hate on Tumblr.
I remember when all of the new ships emerged. That one, there was so much backlash. Oh, this is abusive. You support abuse. You condone all of this. And I was just sitting there like, no, it's just, they like the redemption. Most of them like the redemption arc. Like, the fandom, most of them even called him Ben Solo because they were so convinced that he was good.
Yeah, I would like have a bad day at school, and then I would go on the Raylo tag because I wanted to see stuff with my favorite ship, and it would just be like mountains and mountains of hate. And I was like, I would get so mad because I was like, it might be horrible. It might end up being incest. Okay, whatever. Just stop hating you can hate the ship. You cannot like the ship, but I don't understand why you would be so hateful to people that ship it. And like, they were like people that are in abusive relationships abusive situations would find this ship like reprehensible and horrible. It's like, no, like I was in an abusive relationship for like 2 years, and like Raylo doesn't like make me angry or like make me like triggered or whatever. Like just
that's the thing, is you can't speak for all people because you don't know how they're going to react to it. Like maybe for some people it is upsetting, but for others maybe not. So
and also you can like block tags and stuff like that, so it just
that's the thing too, because I find that now that you have all this extra ability to avoid the things that you don't want, then it just seems that people sometimes go out of their way to go and find things that they don't want, because you can, if you want to, you can live in your own corner of the internet and never encounter anything else ever again.
Yeah, I feel like some corners of Tumblr are kind of like an echo chamber, and then people who hate on things just like also talk to people who only like hate on them, and then it's just like back and forth, and that is kind of problematic, but
yeah, that's why I like to seek my fan fiction out on multiple sites, because the different sites have such different vibes. They are all very different places, and you get a different experience going to all of them. Like reading on Wattpad is not the same as reading on Archive of Our Own.
Very, very true. Yeah.
Speaking of, where is your favorite place to consume fan fiction?
Archive, definitely. I don't know why. I feel like I feel like it's way easier to find specific fan fictions that you want because of like the like how you can search for
Oh, the
things.
filters,
And,
yeah.
yeah. And I just feel like more people are posting on that now, so it's easier to
Hmm.
find a lot of stuff. And I just like read everything in like ships. I'm just like, okay, like refreshing the page. Like I
Oh,
need
I do
more.
the same thing, especially if the ship is small. I'll go back every day for a period of time. I've been all up on the Superbat page because I saw
Oh
Justice
yeah.
League, and what I took away was that Bruce loves Clark. So I've been going there
Oh
every
my
day
gosh. I
just to
just
refresh the page.
I watched all of your like Superbat videos before that, and I was like, I like this ship, but I don't ship it a lot. And then I watched Justice League, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need it. I need it in my life. I love it so much.
I know
So
they
yeah.
tried to make it seem like Lois was what he remembered, and I was like, no, he remembered Bruce
Oh,
first. Don't try and trick me with throwing Lois in
yeah.
there.
Like they love each other. Bruce loves him so much.
He
Like
smiled when he showed up. I was like, Batman is smiling. It's official.
I know. He's like sacrificing all of his friendships with people just to like for the chance to bring Clark back. Like my little shipping heart is gonna explode.
That's one
So
of the other things about fanfiction is you can find some really good stuff in, I guess, work that isn't that loved, I guess would be a good way to describe something like the DCEU, because I have read fantastic works that really build upon not the strongest foundation, because those movies aren't as
yeah.
terrible as people say, but they're not great
Yeah.
either. So
Yeah, I think sometimes the like the best I don't know if this is exactly what you said, sorry if it is, but like sometimes the best fan fiction can come out of like media that is kind of bad because people are like, I gotta fix it, I gotta make it better.
yeah.
Like there's like a better story in there that is not being told. So people really wanna
Mhm.
like make it better, which I think is really cool.
And I feel that that's how a lot of ships end up emerging, because yeah, there are tons of people who are
Mhm.
down for canon ships, but a lot of times it's just little things that make you end up shipping somebody, like how the Stony fandom exploded because in the comics their friendship was broken, and so everybody was trying to fix it, and it became a huge ship until Bucky came along in the film verse and just crushed it.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a friend who's like a huge Stony shipper and she just like talks about it all the time and I'm like, I love that you are so into this ship. Like it makes me so happy.
Do you have any friends who just aren't into fan fiction at all, or?
Yeah. I yeah, I have this friend who like if you even like talk about fan fiction around him, he just like goes very silent and is like, I don't want to talk about it. And I'm like, okay. Like I guess I can understand where you're coming from and I guess I won't like go crazy fangirl on you, but also it's a lot of fun. You're missing out. So I find it really interesting because a lot of like the older people that I've talked to about it are like super like into it. Like even if they didn't have it like in their time, like my mom and some of her friends are like, that's super cool, like that's amazing. But then like
Mhm.
some of the people my age are like, it's horrible, it's like the worst thing ever, it's so stupid. And I'm like, why though? Like I don't understand.
I find that sometimes there's this interesting process that happens around the transition, especially from teenagedom to young adulthood, of maturity and ditching things that are childish and stuff to appear more mature. And I find that happens a lot with fan fiction. I actually just got a tweet today about us. It was a certain fan fiction trope, and the person was like, "Well, I outgrew this after high school." And I was
I
like,
don't
"Look, it's just a trope. It's not something you outgrow, or like maybe you get tired of, but you don't outgrow a trope. It's just."
That's like something that I've been kind of struggling with recently because I just turned 20 like last month and I'm like, am I too old to be in fandom? Like I don't I but then I'm like, there's Sasha and she's like has a kid and is in fandom. So like it's fine, right? And I feel like a lot of like adults are like it's stupid, it's childish, but I really don't think it is. It's just like a like a an online community that
It's an online
like
community, and
fun.
a lot of times it can end up just being a hobby or a relaxation outlet.
Yeah.
Because I found that a lot of my friends who were into it, maybe you get older and you don't have as much time, but I have like some friends who are writers, and maybe after work they'll come and they'll write a chapter or something. It can end up
Yeah.
becoming just a fun way to spend your time, and maybe you're not quite as passionate. But I know tons of people my age, I'm 27, who are still, they're all up and cosplaying and all kinds of things. And
Yeah.
I don't think it matters as long as you keep your other responsibilities in line. As long as you're not sacrificing the things that you have to do or are supposed to do for it, then I think it's absolutely fine. Because, like, for example, there are people who I know who are still like blackout partying, drunk or whatever, but they think they're more mature because they don't like Batman anymore. And it's like, no, it's not what it's about.
Yeah, I have encountered stuff like that too. Like I had a roommate who was like partying all the time, and she would kind of like look down on me for like my fandom stuff, and I was like, I'm getting my work done and you're not, so.
And that's the thing, it's like everybody has different things that they do to unwind. And they're all different, and the things that you keep into adulthood, everybody keeps different things. And it doesn't really matter. I don't think one's better than the other.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Like I'm like heading into finals week, and I've been like writing papers, and then like every time I write like 4 pages, I'll like take like a half-hour break and like make a mood board, and I'm like, it's my reward. So yeah. So yeah, I've come to terms more with like keeping fandom into adulthood recently, but for a little bit I was like, I don't know what to do.
For me, I think it was easy though, because my whole family is so excessively nerdy. My mom was a huge shipper along with me, so I always had somebody to talk about it with, so that made it easier. So I don't think I noticed as much that people were peeling and falling back like by the wayside. I do have one friend now who's just always looking at me like, what are you talking about? My one friend messaged me after Justice League. He was like, what movie did you watch? And I was like, the one with shipping goggles. What movie did you watch?
Oh my gosh, shipping goggles are most like definitely a thing.
Yeah.
Like even sometimes I watch stuff and I'm like, this isn't shippy enough for me. Like I can't continue to watch it. Like I wish I could be into it, but it's not shippy enough. I need something else right now. You know, like that might be a little extra of me, but sometimes I feel like that. I'm like, I just need my shipping outlet to be fulfilled in this media.
I find that I am surprised when I'm not shipping things. Sometimes I'll be watching a show and I'll realize I'm not shipping any. It's an odd experience now to have a medium where I don't have a ship in it. But it does happen. And for a while I was like, I should do a segment called Goggles Off, where we just talk about things with no ship.
I feel like I must do something that doesn't have ships. I think like for a while Voltron was that for me. I was like, this is nice. I don't have any ships. It's fine. And then I like went on Tumblr and I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, has that ever like how many pairings has that happened for you with, where you go on and you check out what the fan fiction is happening, what the tropes are, and what's going on there, and you end up finding a ship?
Okay, so this happened to me very recently. I don't know if you've seen it, but but I like started reading the book after I saw it because I was like, this is great. And then I went on Tumblr and was like looking at stuff, and like Richie and Eddie is like the ship on Tumblr, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's so cute. But I had like never thought of that before until I went on Tumblr, and I was like, this is amazing. And now it's like one of the ships that I do things for, but I didn't even like think of it until Tumblr, until I like saw people were writing about it and like doing stuff. So yeah, I feel like that was how Zutara was for me also when I was first like getting into Avatar: The Last Airbender. I was like, I think that was one of my first ships. I was like, oh my gosh, they would be perfect together. That's amazing. So yeah.
How quickly do you seek fan fiction out? Like, I know for me, if I like something, almost instantly I pretty much go on and see if anybody is writing anything. Especially
if it's like, I'll like come home from seeing a movie and then I'll go on Archive of Our Own and like be like, oh my god, what are people writing about? Yeah. I usually do it pretty quickly unless I don't really have a ship, then it takes me like a little longer to like seek things out. And I feel like it's gotten the time span between when I watch a thing or read a thing or whatever, and then when I seek out fan fiction for it has like become shorter over time. Like I go there more quickly now than I used to. So.
No, I feel the same way, and I feel also because people seem to be writing a lot faster than they used to as well. I'll go see a movie, and it's the opening night, and by midnight, there's already a fic up.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm just like, I read some stuff, and I'm like, how did you write that uld? And it's like good.
They were writing it in the theater.
Yeah. Like just like in their hoodie, just like
missing scene. Sometimes I will admit, though, I wish that the Gen section of fandom, not necessarily that it was bigger, but that it got more attention, because there is a lot of decent work happening in Gen. But when people think of fanfiction, I find that they only think of the shipping side of it, but there is also a ton of other work produced as well.
I feel like I can't even find Gen fiction now. I feel like I used to be able to find it a little bit, but I feel like I don't know. And if it has like more than one, like more than two like main characters, if it's like a group thing, there's still ships in it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I wish Gen Fix were more like accessible a little bit, like easier to find. Like a lot of Game of Thrones stuff, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a Gen thing, and then I'm like, no, it's a ship thing. Okay. So yeah.
When you first started writing fan fiction, were you nervous to put it out there?
Um, I was kind of, but I actually started writing fan fiction. Like my first ever fan fiction site was I think it's called Quote V now.
Okay.
And I would write a lot with like my friends. Like we would all write fan fiction kind of together, and we would like comment on each other's stuff and stuff like that. And I'm kind of the only one that's like kept on doing that. So I feel like when I was younger, I was actually like more like okay with it because there were like people around me that were doing it. But yeah, if anyone commented, I would be like, oh my gosh, I'm so scared to see what they say and stuff like that. But now I'm like if you hate it, fine. I don't really care. Like I'm not really doing this for like to get like amazing reviews, you know. So
is fan fiction ever discussed in any of your classes that you're taking?
I think we discussed it in my like creative writing class that I'm taking right now. And it was like really negative, and I just like didn't say anything because I was like, this is not the hill that I want to die on right now. But yeah, I feel like for especially like academic people, it's viewed as this like very like childish, like badly written thing, and
Mm-hmm.
I really don't agree with that. Which is like I was thinking about going into like an MFA program for like a creative writing degree, but I don't think I'm gonna do that just because of like the like stigma against genre writing in general,
Mm,
and by extension like heavily like people like hate fan fiction like with a passion.
yeah.
And like I can see why that is, and I can understand people that don't understand fan fiction maybe like hating on it, but it kind of bothers me a little bit. I still enjoy like learning writing on an academic level because I feel like
Yeah.
I've gotten a lot better, but some of the like professors freaking do not like it at all.
Are there any of the writing conventions that you actually prefer in fan fiction writing versus contemporary novel writing?
I feel like let me like think about that for a sec. I think that a lot of times like people are more willing to take risks in fan fiction because it's not like you're not writing for like a class or a publisher or whatever, and you can like do kind of whatever you want to.
Mm-hmm.
And so then like crazy tropes happen, like sex pollen and like and like just like crazy things like that, and people are able to experiment a lot, which is something that I kind of wish would happen more in genre fiction, because I feel like especially in YA right now, I feel like it's just like the same story told over and over again because that's what sells.
Yeah.
But in fiction, you can like you're not worried about selling anything or a grade or whatever, so you can kind of experiment. And sometimes it fails and sometimes it's great, and
Mm-hmm.
you're given the freedom to be able to do that. So I think that that's really really fantastic.
That was one of the things I found so fascinating about, like, way back when we were talking about the cursed child at the beginning, because
Mm-hmm.
it was such a fascinating experience reading The Cursed Child, because I will say that I was one of the people, I did feel it was very fanficky.
Oh, definitely.
But the thing was, I wasn't mad at all, but I wasn't mad about that. But just the fact that so much of the fan fiction that I had read was better, I guess, would be a way to put it. And it's kind of like, I almost feel that it's kind of sad when people can't draw upon these conventions. If they're going to draw upon those conventions, then I want to see them drawn upon well, I guess would be a way to put it. Like, surprise daughter is already a really cheesy cliche to pull off. So if you're going to do it, I want it to be amazing.
Yeah, I agree with that. Something that I found like really funny. There was an episode of like Miraculous Ladybug that came out a few days ago. That was like, there was a scene in it that I was like, every Miraculous Ladybug fanfiction has that scene in it. Like, you cannot tell me that the writers did not read fanfiction and did that scene. I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah, because like, I know a lot of shows say they have a policy of no reading of fanfiction, but I swear a lot.
That's not true.
They must. How could you avoid it? People send it to you.
Yeah, like I wasn't in the Gravity Falls fandom when this was happening, but you had talked about it like in Fanon, like Bill called Dipper like Pine Tree, and then it happened in the show, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, was that like that was the thing that happened, right?"
Yeah, no, it's not the only fandom where that's happened. It happened also in the Hannibal fandom where they were calling them murder husbands, and then they brought that onto the show, which was really cool because they had the line of, "Oh, they're calling us murder husbands." I was like, "Oh, that's such a great nod to the fandom." I love when stuff like that happens and is incorporated well.
I mean, stuff like that I don't think is like pandering as much because it's just like a little thing. Not like a giant like story detail like Sterek or something.
It's so awkward because I feel that the mainstream establishment still doesn't know how to handle and incorporate the production of fan fiction properly. I remember a few years ago, I can't remember which magazine it was, but they ran a contest for a fan fiction, and they were gonna run the fan fiction in their magazine, but then they were going to take plot elements from the winning fanfic and put it into the particular show that it was for, and there was a huge backlash because people were like, well, no, that's that person's work and that's their story and you can't just take their idea without crediting them. But then the response was, yeah, but it's already our show. And it was just this weird cacophony of all these different opinions that makes me feel sometimes that it's almost better that the worlds remain separate, because I'm not sure if we know how to integrate them properly yet.
Yeah, I think that it is good that that the worlds kind of remain separate, because they're two very different things. And I feel like recently a lot of maybe the reason that like fandom has become more toxic is because people don't want their like fan fiction to be in a separate world than the show itself, which I mean, I think it's great that the things are separate, because you can do whatever you want and it like doesn't really matter what happens in canon. Like, it's good for some crossover, like the instances we were talking about, but I think in general, it's good that they, remain two entities.
Yeah, because like speaking of Sterek, like that was an incident where the constant communication between fans and creative staff really led to just such a huge backlash and mishandling of everything when it came to that pairing and how people viewed it. And it's just it's so complicated. And the thing is that what I think a lot of shippers don't think about a lot of times is, even if your particular ship, trope, whatever it is, makes it in, you're not going to please everybody, because not everybody ships the same thing or feels the same way, even within one ship or even within one genre. Like, not all coffee house AU is the same. No matter what you do, you're not going to please everyone. So I almost feel like it's better that shows, if they have their own concrete vision, just stick with whatever it is that they're going to go with. And if they feel like incorporating things, then just incorporate the things that they genuinely feel will work best, because pandering pleases nobody.
Yeah,
it really doesn't.
It doesn't. And even if you're like the group that you're pandering to might even be like, oh my god, they did it wrong, like it's so cool. There's just like no good way to do it. I feel like production teams should have like a fan fiction expert on hand to judge their stuff against like what's happening in fandom. I actually think that would be super smart. Because like I feel like fandom has become such a big part of like how people consume media and like movies and TV shows and stuff like that. So
no, especially with the rise of social media and the accessibility of it for the actors, for the creative staff, and that you can see pretty much in real time how people are reacting, what they like, what they don't like. And
yeah,
that affects a production whether you want it to or not. I really think it does.
yeah, I feel like it affects people's lives too. Like if you're like real people, like ships are kind of like really problematic because with social media you can like send people things, and if people get like bombarded with that, it's like not the best.
It's
So,
such a nebulous zone
mhm.
because I'm so much of the mind of yeah, ship and the let's ship and do whatever. And I can understand the mindset of viewing the people more as characters and playing with them in that way. But then that line where you start to either A, send it to them and they're not cool with it, or actually think that you're not just writing fiction anymore, but these are real theories. Because I've seen
Yeah.
that, like the conspiracy theories, especially in Fandom, that happens a lot of no, they're secretly together and we know that they're
In what?
together. And
In what?
in Fandom, like for bands, that
Oh yeah,
happens a
yeah, yeah,
lot.
yeah.
Like the
Oh,
One Direction.
and the Dan and Phil fandom. Like it's fine to ship people. I
Hmm.
think it's fine to ship people, but I think like there come like it's really hard with real person ships, and I think you should maybe like keep it within that like community of like shipping and not like
Not
not
yeah,
put
because
it
I
like the actual
remember
people.
when I did Septiplier and I was watching
Oh yeah,
Jacksepticeye's response to it, and you could tell he was having such a hard time discussing it because it clearly made him really uncomfortable, but at the same time, he didn't want to upset the fan base. And it was like, just what a horrible position to be in to not be able to just say, like, look, guys, please stop without
yeah,
bothering everybody. And he said that it kind of affected their relationship a little bit. Not in that they weren't friends, but in that just knowing if you're going to hang out with somebody that everybody's going to be scrutinizing what you do or say, and they're going to gif it and put it up and use it as fodder for their fix. It must add a weird meta level to your interactions with people.
oh definitely. Yeah, I can't even imagine living like that. Like having all of your actions like scrutinized and like, oh, this thing that he did fit this theory that I have. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like I'm actually writing like an original story about that right now. So
Mm-hmm.
that's something that I'm like thinking a lot about like how like identity of like people in like how they actually view themselves and how other people view them, and like the differences between that, and like how it can be
Yeah.
really problematic when you assume someone is a certain way and they're really not. Like ship whatever you want. I'm always of the mindset like ship whatever you want, but don't like harass people about it.
No, 100%, because RPF doesn't surprise me at all, and it's always low
Yeah.
key existed. Even if you think about tabloids, like they're essentially low key RPF when
Oh
you
my gosh,
really
seriously.
like when you really examine it. So that's fine. It's just boundaries. The internet and boundaries is a complicated, difficult thing.
Yeah, 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 definitely. Because there really aren't any like defined boundaries. It's like whatever you like establish for yourself in your brain is like the boundary. So, yeah.
Is what it is. Yeah. How have you found, like, speaking of fan fiction and stuff, how have you found people's critiques and criticisms in general? Like, do you find them to be constructive? Like, how is it in the comment section?
I've 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 been really lucky in that I've mostly received like really positive like critiques. If I get critiques, it's like I really liked this, but like there's some things that I think are a little out of character. There are some things that I think like grammatical things that you should fix, and I'm like, "Oh, that's really nice." Um so I feel like in general it's pretty good.
Hmm.
I know that there are some people that like kind of get like not butthurt, but like get a little more like riled up about it than they should.
Hmm.
Not maybe than they should, but like get really hurt by it. But it doesn't really affect me. Maybe because I've had to do like workshopping with real people, like staring at them in the face, like this sucks in your story, and I'm like, oh god. So I feel like it's a little easier online because you can kind of like take a step back and be like, okay, that's like really constructive, but that's not exactly what I want to do with my story. So like, thank you for your
Hmm.
comment, but I don't like necessarily agree with it. And I feel like other fan fiction writers are very respectful of each other, because we all kind of know what that's like to get criticism and stuff. I found it to be pretty positive. I know that there are some people who have not had positive experiences, but I've been very lucky and that my experience has been mostly positive. So
How do you find the balance? Because one of the things I know is that like when fics get really popular nowadays, it's the same as with anything. Like people are very excited, they want you to update, they're very vocal about wanting those updates.
oh yeah,
So how do
oh
you
yeah.
find the balance or the time of if you are writing something, finding the time to write? Like what kind of priority does it end up taking?
Sometimes if I'm like really, really into it, I'll kind of like a little bit neglect my other stuff to write it, but that has been able to happen less and less as I've gotten like farther along in college. And
Hmm.
so sometimes I will write like a few chapters of a thing and then I'll have to take a step back for a few months, but usually in breaks I like go back and like finish it. So I usually finish everything. It just takes me a little while, and I'm okay with that because
Hmm.
I'm writing it not for like the reads or whatever. I'm like writing it for me. And so I think that I've been able to find a balance of like I'm just going to take a step back and I'm going to come back to this later, and even if I get people like yelling at me that I need to finish it, like like I don't necessarily have all of the time to dedicate to this fandom. And I know that there are people with way more like followers than I have because they're able to like dedicate so much time to it. And I'm fine with not having as many because I know that I'm not putting in the work that I necessarily need to, but I like logistically I kind of can't do that kind of I can't be like the most dedicated to things. And I hope I'll be able to like change that a little bit, like maybe like make some time to do that. But maybe not, maybe it won't ever be like that. But I find that fandom is like a place that I go when I need like a break from life.
Hmm.
So I try to make it like as positive as I can, and I feel like stressing myself out by like saying that I have to have this like chapter up like this week just makes it really, really stressful. And then that's when I get like really burned out with stuff, when I like try to force myself
Yeah.
to like do it on top of all of the other work that I have to do for school and like work and whatever. So
Hmm. So do you think it's something that you'll always end up maintaining, or do you see it as something that maybe potentially in the future you might kind of just drop off or become more of a lurker, or, you know?
I feel like if I ever get like an actual writing career where I'm like writing my own books, I might like stop. I might be like a lurker, like full on lurker. Um, but if I'm just like, a layman with like time on my hands, I feel like it's something maybe even if I don't write it, I'll like still read stuff and comment on it and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So so yeah.
How do you think you would feel if you ended up writing your own work and you got fan fiction on it? How would you feel about that?
I would love it. I was reading or like watching an interview or something with Sarah J. Maas, who writes the like the Throne of Glass and the Court of Thorns and Roses series, and she
Hmm.
was talking about how she and her friend Susan Denard they like write fan fiction about their own works, like crossover fic. And I
That's
was like, that
great.
could be me. If I ever write my own stuff, I will write fan fiction about my own stuff. Like I'll have like a secret account where I'm like writing stuff. People would be like, that's kind of out of character, and I'm like, okay. But I would be fine with it. I've thought about this before, and I'm like, it would make me the happiest person ever if people like wrote fan fiction about my stuff, because like I love fan culture, and I think that like creating my own like sub fan culture based on like
Hmm.
my own works, that would just be the coolest thing ever.
Hmm.
So I do hope that happens one day.
No, I remember the first time I ever got a piece of fan art, I was like, "Oh my God, it's this is the metaest thing that's ever happened to
So
me."
yeah. Hmm.
And I was
Yeah.
just like, "Yay!"
Yeah, I wrote this like miraculous fan fiction, and someone was like, I want to translate it into Ukrainian. And I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. So like I'm like really good friends with her now, and
Hmm.
she's like translating it, and that's like the first time that kind of stuff has ever happened to me, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So yeah.
That's the really fun thing about fandom and writing is that it can be a community. It's not for everybody, but it
Yeah.
really can be. And you can meet some really fun people who end up
Oh,
becoming
definitely.
actual friends.
I wish I had done that more when I was like in high school, but I feel like I've done that I feel like I've gotten into like making friends online more recently, and I really, really like it because even if you're not like posting a ton, you can still be tuned into fandom based on like your friends telling you about things, and it's fun. So I like it a lot.
No, I found the same thing. That also happened to me in university. It's just there's no
Hmm.
time for real life stuff sometimes in university. There was
Yeah.
just no time to do any of that. So online became a real social space because of it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have to agree with that. Sometimes you're like, I really don't have time to go out and hang out with people. I'm just gonna stay in my room and like
Yeah.
talk to people on Twitter. Like
I think that's why I like Archive of Our Own so much because it's got the best mobile layout I find of
oh yeah.
all of the sites to use just quickly on your phone. Fanfiction.net, I used to really like it, but it's a bit convoluted to use all of these search engines.
Oh yeah.
When you're up to 5 different characters that you can select, I'm like, it's too much. I don't need that much selection process.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I really like using Archive of Our Own on mobile. I recently got a new phone and it was like I was trying to read something that was like rated M and it had that like warning,
Oh yeah.
like are you sure you want to proceed? And I was like, oh yeah, I haven't logged in yet. What the heck? And I just got so mad. I was like, why is it asking me this? Like I obviously want to read it. So it was funny, yeah.
Did you ever have anything lost in the purges? Because people forget that back when before it all got amalgamated,
Yeah.
there were often purges of either things that were deemed inappropriate or things that were incorrectly tagged slash marked. That was something that used
Hmm.
to happen. Instead of just getting a message of your tags are wrong, please fix, it was you said this was T and it's M, deleted.
Oh yeah. I that never happened to anything I wrote because like I was reading stuff when that kind of thing was happening, but I wasn't like publishing things.
Mhm.
So nothing that I wrote ever got purged, but I remember like going on to like bookmarks and it was like this doesn't exist anymore and I was like no. Or like going on to like fanvid playlists and like half of them are deleted and I was like why is God forsaken me?
They used to
So
be, yeah, they used
yeah.
to be very anal about that. I much prefer the new system where they just claim it. Because by the end of the time I was making fan videos, they had adopted the system. They were just claiming it and linking to the iTunes. And I'm like, I'm fine with that. That's fine. But before that, they would block it worldwide and all kinds of,
Yeah.
in my opinion, nonsense. Because I'm like, I'm not trying to profit off it. And at that time, you didn't get ads anyway. So I'm like, why are you blocking it?
Yeah. That's yeah. Oh, I remember like the terror that I would have, like, oh my God, I hope this doesn't get deleted because it's like my favorite thing in the world. Yeah, I used to, oh my God, I was so into fanvids in like middle school. I would like spend hours just like going through fanvid like
Hmm.
searches and stuff and just like praying that things didn't get deleted. So,
No, that's why I started printing Fix because too many times
oh yeah.
either the domain name expired or I went to the live journal because live journal used to be so much bigger than it is now and it was that goat picture with the it's been purged and I never understood why it was a goat
Oh
and
God.
it was just that upsetting billy goat sticking its tongue out at you that your account was gone. It was so sad.
That is like every time you see a goat, you're like, no.
Yeah, it's just
Like,
it's like
"Ow."
a Pavlovian response.
Yeah. I'm so glad that that doesn't happen as much now. I feel like if you post stuff on archive, it's like it's safe. It's fine. It's
Hmm.
good.
And Archive even has that great option where if, let's say, because you're in a field or something where it's not viewed as professional or appealing, you can unlist it essentially, wherein you can take
Oh
your
yeah,
name
yeah, yeah.
off it, but it can still stay up and people can still read it.
Oh
But
yeah, like orphaning it.
yeah, orphaning.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never done that before, but I had a friend who wrote like a Full Metal Alchemist fanfic and she didn't update it for like 3 years and everyone was like bullying her a ton and she was like,
Aw.
I'm just gonna nope. Yeah.
You know, I think that's a really great option because then you get to leave it up for the people who do enjoy it. But if for whatever reason you can no longer be associated with it, you need to Alan Smithy
Yeah.
yourself. You can just get rid of it.
Yeah, you're just like, I want this to exist still. I want to be able to find it, but I don't want it to be associated with me.
No, I remember I love Alan Smithy as the fake pen name. At my work, with a bunch of editors, we were all listed on the credits of the videos that we edited. And I remember there
Hmm.
was one guy who, for some reason, he didn't want to be associated with this one specific video. So he put on
Uh-huh.
Alan Smithy, and we all thought that was really funny. But my boss didn't know about that particular part of film history, so he thought we'd hired a new editor. So He called me
that's
and he was
great.
like,
Oh my
who's
God.
Alan? I've never met Alan before.
Why did you hire someone without letting me know?
Yeah,
what
like, who is Alan?
Yeah.
No, one of the things I love too about fan fiction is like you don't know who's writing it, and so you get so many different and unique viewpoints because of it. My brother recently started publishing his fan fiction online, and I know that everybody just thinks he's a chick because of his username, and I'm like, this is so funny to me, like reading the responses to it and knowing that he wrote it. It's just great.
It's like, girl, it was great, and you're like, he's actually a boy, but yeah.
Did you ever have anybody make assumptions about you based on what you wrote or anything? Because I've seen that a few times in the comments, like, oh, this person must be such and such. Not even necessarily in a bad way, but just like, oh, they must be such and such because they wrote it like this. I just find that very fascinating.
I don't think that's ever necessarily happened for me. I feel like on Tumblr, I've gotten like anonymous messages being like, oh my God, you're so amazing. Like, you're great. And I'm like, I'm really not, but you know. But thanks. And I've gotten a few that are like kind of nasty, but I'm like, you don't know me, so it's whatever. But I've never gotten it on like my fan fiction, I don't think. I haven't checked the comments in a little bit, so maybe there's something just like lurking on there waiting for me, but I don't I mean, I feel like I've assumed things maybe about other people, but I've never like commented about it or anything.
Mm-hmm. So, what is your favorite trope?
Okay. I think that my favorite trope, honestly, is high school AU. Like, I am a sucker for high school AU. Like, especially like Marvel and Star Wars and stuff like that. I love it. I love it so much, which is weird because it's usually not like the best written. It's just so fun. Like, it's so fun. Like, I love it. Yeah. What's your favorite?
Mine is, it's very cheesy. It is the suddenly, magically, or scientifically, one of the main characters becomes a child, and the rest of the cast needs to look after them.
Oh my God. Do you watch Star Trek The Next Generation?
I do, yes.
Do you remember that? It was like called Rascals or something, that one where like Jean-Luc and like Guinan and
they all became little kids.
That's like my favorite episode of The Next Generation. Like, that's a great trope. I love it so much.
They also actually did it in the Avengers Assemble show. The one that was extremely fanficky, where it was the one I read all the time. It was young Tony, and then there's just this still of him hugging adult Captain America, and I was like, it happened. It happened in real life.
So much. I also love like these two characters inexplicably crash on a planet together, like or like in this situation where they're like alone together and like things have to happen, and I'm like, yes.
The stranded AU. I love the stranded AU.
It's great.
Stranded AU is right up there with body heat for forcing people to be together. Like, oh no, it's snowing.
God, yeah.
We need to conserve our body.
I feel like body heat is something that like happens in like everything, and it's like such an accepted trope even in like mainstream. It's great. I love it. I just love things that are like, these two characters have to be together for like reasons, and it's like, yes.
Yeah, I know. I do enjoy it. Like, we're gonna remove all obstacles. All the obstacles are gone. We just really need this to happen right now.
I feel like that's a thing that like sometimes can only happen in fan fiction, because in other things I'd be like, that's really gimmicky, but in fan fiction it's like, I need it now. like the sooner it happens, the better. Because
there's an acceptance that you don't need to acknowledge all the characters and stuff, which is part of what makes fan fiction a bit freeing, because if it was a canonical work, there would be all those questions of, where's this character? What are they doing? Why aren't they here? How did you get rid of them? Or why did you make them a jerk? Because I don't mind if the characterization is slightly altered. I'm not a fan of character bashing, but if people play upon like a slight character trait that was there and maybe play it up a bit to get the person out of the way, I'm okay with that. Like, I don't mind the Superman fix where it's Lois decides she was going to focus on her career. And I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Like, you go, be a strong, independent woman. Like, yes.
It's all right. Bruce is there. We already know this.
We already know what's going to happen. It's like, yeah, I feel like that's the great thing about fan fiction is like, it can be as tropey as you want and no one's going to really care.
No, that's the thing that I really like about it, and why, while I do like that people are taking it more seriously, I do think that it's always important to retain that sense of fun, and that no
Hmm.
matter what you're doing in life or anywhere, it's always important to be able to take that step back and not take things too seriously.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
because that's when things get. I'm actually going to do a vid on it soon. The top 10 Tumblr ships. There's more than 10, but the New York Times wrote an article about it,
Oh my God, really?
and it was just the most fascinating thing I've ever read. It was really trying to make it seem that shippers are these really politically active people who are only shipping to fill the voids of representation left in mainstream media. And I was like, well, sometimes, but not.
I do think that like people that are in fandom are generally more liberal than people that aren't in fandom, but I don't think that's obvious. That's obviously not true for everyone. And sometimes people just ship things because they want to ship them, not because of any like. I mean, obviously, people just ship them because they want to ship them,
And
not because of a
because of the
political agenda.
chemistry. Lots of times
Yeah,
it's just chemistry, and lots of times that is lacking because of other reasons that you're not going to see in the mainstream. But it was just the way it phrased it. It was so fascinating, and I was just like, the New
yeah, that's
York
really
Times
interesting.
using the same image of Poe and Finn that I used in one of my videos
Oh my God.
as their starting picture. I'm always so wary because they actually did quote somebody in there, and they were like fandom expert, and I was like, okay, look, nobody's a fandom expert. Fandom is too big for there to be a
Yeah.
fandom expert. It's too
Oh my God.
large,
Fandom is
too nebulous.
sometimes there'll be like something on Tumblr that like has a massive following, and I'm like, I have never even heard of this. Like, what? I did like, how could I not have heard of that?
That was the
So
other great thing too,
yeah,
because the article was what your Tumblr ship says about you, and I was like, some people don't even go on Tumblr. Let's acknowledge that
yeah,
right now.
yeah.
Some people are scared of Tumblr, and I don't blame them.
I don't blame them either. Like, it's hard to like get into. I feel
Mhm.
like I'm in this weird like middle ground where I remember the days when there were like servers and stuff and like Tumblr was like first becoming popular, but also I've had Tumblr for most of my fandom experience, so I can like identify with like the old fandom people, but I can also identify with like the younger fandom people. So it's
Mhm.
interesting.
No, I feel
Like
the
I
same
was
way because it's changed so much in such a short period of time in terms of how you
yeah.
can get things. It's really fascinating to like just be able to go on and it's all still there and it's not going anywhere and no one's taking down a song fic because there's lyrics in it and all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff that
Yeah,
used to
yeah.
happen. I'm excited to see how it evolves. I'm really interested to see where fan fiction is going to go and how its relationship with the official works continues to grow because like that's not going anywhere and people are just going to keep sending their stuff and I feel that the two are just going to become more and more melded, so I'm very interested to see how, like what effect that has on both fan fiction and official works.
Oh yeah, me too. I feel like that'll be interesting, and I feel like maybe things will get more like tropey and like I incorporate some stuff in fan fiction, and I wonder how the like the fandom is going to respond to that if it happens, you know?
Mm-hmm. I'm so fascinated because, and sometimes people, like, Voltron's a good one for this, where some of the expectations for the dominant ship are based off of what has happened in past fandoms that have shared some of the same creative stuff. And I'm like, that's just
Yeah,
really fascinating to expect your ship to happen because another ship happened on another show that kind of had some of the same people working on it. It's just very, very interesting.
it's definitely really interesting. Yeah, that's I can't I don't even like when we were talking about like how would I feel about having my own
Mm-hmm.
thing be like have fan fiction written about it. I
Yeah.
feel like there would I really hope that I would never have to deal with that kind of like expectation of things happening in the own work based on like fandom stuff. Like I feel like it would be really hard to work on on things that are heavily shipped because of how much people are invested in like their ship being canon,
Mm-hmm.
and like that stuff that happened with Steven Universe, like the artist being like bullied off of Twitter, basically,
Yeah.
like that would be really hard to deal with. I feel like.
Yeah, it's really hard because like on a situation like that, like sometimes like you can just tell the fans are going way too far, but sometimes on the other
Mhm.
hand, the creative staff don't know how to use social media. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah. I agree. Like,
It's difficult.
Jeff Johns.
Yeah. I think people need to acknowledge too, though, that there are so many different layers in a project, and that you can be a fan of a project that you're working on and know that it's not going to go a certain way, for example, and have your own ship, but not be able to influence how the work is going to go in any way. If you're a storyboard artist, there's really nothing you can do. Like, maybe you can bring it up to a writer, but that doesn't guarantee that anything is going to happen. It's just, that's just not your job on the show at all. So
yeah, so like you can like empathize with people, but then people think you have more power than you actually do, and it's just like, that would be difficult.
I guess it's hard. It's hard to deal with fandom because there's that whole stereotype that fans are difficult to please, and I think it's one of the stereotypes that's actually true. It can be very difficult, especially in this era where people really want the canonicity of their ships to come to fruition.
I also feel like sometimes when ships become canon, like people, like the writers and stuff, like don't know what to do anymore. They're like, well, I guess this is just going to be boring now.
100%. I feel like writers have a really hard time in general writing nuanced, happy relationships. Which is why I'm so pleased with This Is Us. I love This Is Us because then you can depict a happy relationship isn't a perfect relationship. It still has problems. There are still arguments. It's just at the end of the day, you know that it's staying together. It's not going anywhere. But I feel that sometimes some writers have a hard time without that ultimate stake of it ending. Cause I remember when Peter Parker married Mary Jane and they just didn't know what to do with her anymore. And she essentially showed up sometimes, bring him lunch, and that was like the extent of it. They were like, well, what did she do during the day? I don't know. It was so bad. And then they divorced him or like annulled their marriage because they wanted to bring him back to his roots. And I was like, guys, you just couldn't write it. Don't pretend this had anything to do with bringing him back to his roots.
Like you just didn't know how to write a happy relationship. That's really interesting. I feel like that also has like a weird way, like I feel like that's affected me kind of in my like personal life, like feeling like there was nowhere to go after like it had happened, because like I had been like writing stuff and I was like, oh, like this is the end game. It's like, no, there's stuff after that. So I feel like that's really interesting.
I find this in fandom too. Sometimes when a ship becomes canon, it can actually lose some fandom support.
Oh yeah. Olicity. I think that's really interesting. I think that happens more when like they don't know how to write the happy fandom. I feel like, or not the happy fandom, the happy relationship.
With Olicity too, I found that there was some genre backlash because lots of people didn't like the romance mixing with the superhero genre. I find that in general, romance as a genre gets a lot of flack, way more flack than it deserves. Because like romance, even mainstream romance, is a very tropey genre, and I find that a lot of people aren't down for the tropes because a lot of them tend to be a bit more problematic's a good word for it, like that fun kidnapping trope that is a huge one that keeps happening. We're kidnapped and handcuffed together. Now we love each other.
But I feel like it's really hard to find anything nowadays that doesn't have fan fiction in it. Not fan fiction.
Romance,
that doesn't have romance in it.
No, I do understand how people get burned out. Like sometimes I get comments that are like, why can't we just have a good friendship? I'm like, yeah, I understand that.
Sometimes people are like, why can't boys just be friends? And it's like, yeah, that's kind of true. Because like every like male friendship, they get shipped with each other.
It feels sometimes like just every relationship, anything. I feel that's how we end up with things like Pinecest, because on the surface, it's because they're so close. It's this close relationship between two characters, and they're getting along in ways that siblings aren't normally depicted as doing, because that like lots of times they like to depict really negative sibling relationships as the norm. And so it's like I can understand the trip to there, but at the same time, it does deny a lot of different forms of love and relationships that also deserve attention, like the familial that often gets pushed to the side a lot in favor of the romantic. Like there's a lot more that can be done with different styles of relationships that doesn't happen, but I feel that happens in the mainstream as well all the time.
I feel like Gravity Falls was an interesting one for me because like when I started watching it, I had like the biggest shipping goggles on, and I was like, there's nothing, like I don't know what to ship. And like I could almost understand why people shipped like Dipper and Mabel, even though it was like super problematic and I like don't ship it. But like, if you're viewing something with shipping goggles and you don't have something to ship, you're going to end up shipping the people that have the most chemistry. And if those people are siblings, they're going to end up getting shipped. And that's like, I think that's a problematic thing about shipping goggles, but I don't know.
That's the thing,
it's weird.
because shipping goggles, sometimes I feel like they're not a choice. Like sometimes you just end up going into something and you end up shipping. But I do find that sometimes people do go into things looking to ship, and they'll ship even if there's no ship there. But not only that, but they'll get upset if people say like, oh, you're just shipping goggles, there's nothing there, kind of, and then you end up with that butting of heads of the two very different fan types, which can be quite fascinating. Because I'll be the first to admit that there are times when I've shipped things and the evidence is just it's not there, but that's okay.
Yeah. I also don't think like you always really need evidence to ship. Like sometimes you can just be like, I like these two people together, and like I feel like there's more of a culture now of like trying to find evidence for ships, which is not always like super necessary. Like just ship what you want to ship. But yeah,
like they don't need a complex backstory. Like not everything needs to be my strat or my straight, however we're pronouncing it. Because I actually really do enjoy the backstories people have given them. They're really creative. I like that fandom a lot. They're like, they have never met. Let's do this.
Let's make one. Let's fix it. Yeah,
we're gonna make it happen. They're secretly friends. It's been going on for years. But at the same time, that I think this goes back to being able to not take things so seriously. That to be able to take that step back and acknowledge how it looks to people on the outside, I think that's always a good experiment to do sometimes, and be like, if I was not a shipper or a fangirl and I just happened upon this, how would I feel about it?
I don't even know how to do that anymore, because I feel like I'm just like so into it that I can't even like take a step back. I'm like, I like ask a friend, I'm like, how does this look? Is this weird? And they're like, yeah, it's weird. Okay, whatever.
I find that because I'm in so many fandoms all the time, I can pretty easily step out of them. But I think that's just a symptom of being in so many that it's impossible to get overly invested, because they're just constantly cycling. Because for me, at least, none of mine really go away. I just kind of cycle between them.
Yeah, me too. I kind of feel like I maybe can take a little bit of a step back. Like I was just thinking about this. Like I've kind of become like a self-proclaimed mom of like the It and Stranger Things fandom. I'm like, everyone needs to calm down. Like you need to like chill. You're all like 14 to 16. Like just take a step back. It's not that big of a deal. Just like breathe. It's gonna be okay. So
no, nothing's gonna be okay when you're 14 to 16. Nothing is going to be.
No, nothing is ever gonna be okay. It's like the end. Everything is the end of the world, and it's like I've been there. I can empathize. Yeah. It's fine. Like nothing I say is gonna change that. So
I have to say I do enjoy the mellowness that's come with being older in fandom. Not that that comes for everybody, because I do know some very intense older fans, but I am enjoying my own mellowness.
Yeah, like like in the Voltron fandom, I'm just like, I'm gonna stay over here with like Pigeon Lance, and I'm just gonna ship this happy ship that no one is like super like intense about. Like, this is fun. You guys can be over there with like your hatred and your whatever, your ship wars, and I'm like, I'm just happy, just mellow. I'm just cool being here, chilling. So.
Yeah, it's going to be so fascinating looking back on it when it's done, because I'm doing a bunch of Sterek stuff now, gathering all the things, and that's just fascinating. I'm like, wow, it's hard to believe that so much of this actually happened. Like when you tell the story of, say, Cookies for Sterek or Bizarre Weird Twisted, and you have to explain it to somebody, it's like, okay, so he gave the award to an anti-shipper, and it's just you realize how you sound, and it's really funny.
Like, let me tell you the chronicles of this fandom. They are long and varied. Like, yeah.
I don't know. That's one of the really fun things about it. And that's another interesting thing, because I do find that while in writing circles it is still very looked down upon, in other aspects of academia it's becoming more and more of a thing that people are looking to examine.
Oh, really?
I've talked to a couple of people who are doing their master's theses on various either fandom tropes. One person I was talking to was doing it on the queering of Star Trek. Somebody else was doing it on the toxicity of the Sherlock fandom as it was coming up. So like, yeah, I've gotten a couple of different people doing their actual masters on fandom stuff, which is really interesting.
I want to do my master's on that. I'm gonna write my thesis on fandom. Like seriously, that's amazing. Oh my god, yeah. I would love to like talk to people that are doing that, because I find that just so interesting. Like I find it interesting from like a fandom perspective, but I also find it interesting from like an academic perspective, like sociologically and stuff, like the communities like created like within fandom. So that's really cool.
Yeah, because like fandom is a subculture, and I feel like sometimes people in fandom do forget that. But it's also exciting to see it be acknowledged that it is definitely having an impact. Like I'm hoping to do a Fanversations with the person who's doing theirs on Star Trek, because Star Trek has such a fascinating history with its queer representation, both canonically and then in the fandom, which has always been just like the birthplace of fiction essentially.
Yeah.
And then but versus how it is actually depicted on the show itself, it's just very fascinating to see.
Yeah, I'll be looking forward to that one, because that's something I'm very interested in as well. So, but I don't know a ton about that, but that's super cool.
Like,
yeah.
No, like I'm such a huge Trekkie. It's a problem. It's a problem in my life.
That's awesome though. I was like raised on The Next Generation. My dad and I like rented all of it the summer when I was like 8, and we just marathoned all of it before like binging was really a thing, and it was that was great.
Well, so. I am out of time here. But I want to thank you so much for talking with me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was great.
No, it's always good to talk about fan fiction and tropes. And so plug your stuff again. Shameless plug.
Okay. So my Tumblr is Starks-and-Skywalkers. And I am pretty active on there. And then my fanfiction site is, my fanfiction is Archive of Our Own, and it's my pen name is Sarah Spoonhands. And I also have a Stranger Things It fandom Twitter, and I think my handle is Fanny Packtozer.
That's
so
awesome.
If you want to find me, thanks. If you want to find me on any of those, like just head over there, talk to me about anything. I'll be glad to offer me suggestions on fan fiction. It's almost winter break. I'll probably write a ton. So yeah.
And hopefully maybe we can do this again sometime. It was a lot of fun.
Yes, great. Yeah, thank you so much.
No, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
So, did you make it to the end? Are you a trooper? Thank you so much if you did. And if you did, please let me know what is your favorite fanfiction trope. Also, let me know how you're enjoying the series in general. We've been here long enough, so thank you so much for watching, and let's get to that outro. This has been Shipper's Guide to the Galaxy. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Special thanks to all my patrons. Again, if you're interested in helping determine content, check out Patreon. The link is down below. And please feel free to follow me on social media to keep up to date with what's coming up next. Thanks again, and as always, stay tuned, for there are as many ships out there as there are stars in the sky.